Hey guys, I'm Aaron Chapo. Welcome to the first ever episode of League Alerts Weekly. We are going to be posting these every single week, so be sure to subscribe to get all the latest content on the NBA on our YouTube channel. Welcome to League Alerts Weekly, your weekly newsreel of what's going on in the NBA. I'm Aaron Chapo.
And I'm Viraj Kaitan. Welcome to the show. Our first story has to do with the big historical couple of days starting from Wednesday until Saturday. As we know, the altercation between Jacob Blake and police officers sparked a boycott, starting with the Milwaukee players not coming out of their locker rooms, and this moment again sparked all three games to be postponed. Now it looks like we might start up the games on Saturday, August 29th. Aaron, how do you feel about all of this?
Well, I kind of think that the idea of what they're doing makes sense. They want to fight police brutality. Granted, this case was a little more iffy, but it's still, the point is very clear. They want to end police brutality and get rid of racism, especially in law enforcement. The issue that I have with it is that I don't think it's actually going to be as historic as we think it is, because we noticed during their bubble that their ratings had dropped significantly during the playoff games. And that's really weird because they had some of the best games I've ever seen, like that Utah Jazz thriller in overtime. But despite that, they still lost a lot of viewership. And it's very obvious why. Right before the NBA decided to return, the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor shook America. And the NBA quickly said that they were going to go all in supporting the Black Lives Matter organization. And LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo and plenty other NBA players were extraordinarily happy with this decision, but a lot of fans were not, because the Black Lives Matter organization is somewhat controversial. So a lot of people do not actually support it. We are not taking sides on this podcast and video. We are not going to explain our opinions on the Black Lives Matter organization, but the truth is that a lot of people do not support the Black Lives Matter organization, as proven by Jonathan Isaac's jersey nearly selling out after he stood for the anthem. And so with their drop in viewership, which we all know was the people that did not support the Black Lives Matter organization, it kind of drifted away from the people that they're trying to convince about how police brutality must be stopped. So it's not really as historic as you'd think. They went all in with Black Lives Matter, putting the Black Lives Matter logo on their courts, allowing people to put social justice messages on their jerseys, and putting countless Black Lives Matter commercials in between breaks during the games. So the only people that are really watching it are the people that already support Black Lives Matter and the NBA. Obviously, there's going to be several that still don't support the Black Lives Matter organization and love basketball, but that is not the majority. So I think that it really was more predictable that they boycott as to this point, and this fact that they had already driven away the people they need to convince. So I'm really not convinced that this is going to amount to anything more than just delaying the games. And it's unfortunate that that has to be the case, but it is. What do you think?
Yeah. You mentioned, so like as more players and coaches are taking political sides through this whole movement, not many people really think about, like you mentioned, the financial implications, ratings, stuff like that. As you mentioned, the Jonathan Isaacs jersey selling out, and although players like LeBron and Giannis don't really, that's not their motive. Their motive is the social injustice and stuff like that. One important aspect from a business side is the ratings and the money and all that stuff. And this was a big topic that was really brought up through this whole couple of days, starting with the league meeting that started at 8 o'clock with all players and coaches and staff invited. This was on Wednesday night after the boycott games. The goal of this meeting was to discuss the future plans, further options, but more the financial implications. And obviously, with everyone having their side of the story, this was a very intense meeting. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, there were a lot of people going back and forth. Some of the loudest voices in the room were LeBron and Kawhi and Chris Paul, Andre Iguodala, Corver, coaches like Doc Rivers and John Lucas, and of course, the head of the Players Association, Michelle Roberts. There was a lot of frustration toward Milwaukee for not showing a unified effort and for putting Orlando in a unsettling position. And players eventually asked coaches to leave so that the players could speak more freely. And like you mentioned, because everyone is kind of, fighting and everyone has their own side of the story, the meeting ended very ugly and emotionally. LeBron ended up walking out with both LA teams. And at the end, there was a vote as to if they should continue or if they should cancel the season. 14 teams voted to continue versus the Clippers and Lakers being the only two teams to cancel the season entirely.
Yeah, it was a very ugly situation. I'm not sure if it was actually 14. I believe the Pacers, the Nets, and
Oh, my bad.
yeah, one other team. Which team was eliminated? There were three teams that were eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it was, I believe, 11 teams technically. But yeah, all but two had voted to not cancel the season, with really only the Lakers and Clippers, meaning really just mainly LeBron for the Lakers, since he kind of
Mm-hmm.
speaks for the team, wanted to cancel it. And the part that got really ugly was the divide that occurred between LeBron James and the much younger players. A lot of younger players accused LeBron of trying to act like the king of the NBA more than just the king of the court, saying that he was trying to just force his opinion and force his influence into every decision the NBA makes. And it is an accusation that you could see some ground for. I mean, he is definitely a big reason why the NBA went so big into supporting the Black Lives Matter organization. And so, do you think that this is going to create a permanent, a new kind of relationship between young players and LeBron James, since they've not seen him in a very different light, what they might say a more selfish light, as he is kind of just pushing for what he wants?
No, only because I don't see anything wrong with voicing his opinion, sharing his concern when it comes to these off the court issues.
Gotcha. But do you think that this is going to change the relationship between the young players and LeBron? Like the 22-year-olds, say like Luka Doncic or even Giannis, who's only 25, he voted not to cancel the season. Do you think that is going to create a divide among these people?
Again, no, because, just because you have some different, political or social, you think you have different opinions on these topics doesn't mean that you are a bad person or anything like that. And I think these guys are professional enough to understand that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was some good that came out of the meeting after all, despite the NBA not being canceled the way LeBron wanted to. The NBA announced that they're going to allow their arenas to become polling stations for people to vote in the upcoming election between Trump and Joe Biden. So it is very obvious that the NBA is doing everything they can to support their players, but they still need to, have their season. They need to be able to afford next season, because if you use your platform to not play, there may not be a platform next year, because there's been talk about a potential lockout if they were to cancel the season. But it is very good to see that they're working very closely with their players to ensure that they can make compromises to really push forward on the path to social justice that they believe is necessary. You've also seen people like Chris Paul leading his teammates by getting all of them registered to vote in the wake of the Jacob Blake police altercation. So it's really good to see them taking a stand as to what they believe in, even if it means that it could hurt their reputation.
Yeah, and there were, like you mentioned, Chris Paul, LeBron, there were a lot of different people that really believed that that the owners should be more involved and proactive when it comes to these social and racial issues. There was actually another meeting on Thursday afternoon with player reps and team owners and the league office and player association officials, where again players challenge owners to be more involved, and through all of these conflicts you do see some results. Like you mentioned, the arenas will be will be, what you say, you said polling stations. The league created financial commitments, a $300 million fund for Black communities, according to Shams Charania. So you do see results.
Yeah, it's definitely very clear that the NBA is very set on using their platform to push for the social justice they believe to be necessary. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that first segment. We'll be right back with some NBA draft analysis soon. But first, I want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to follow League Alerts on Instagram if you want to get the fastest NBA news no matter where you are. And also to subscribe to our newsletter on our website to catch every single article that's posted to get the best in-depth analysis you'll ever see. All right, now let's get back to the video.
Hey guys, we're back on the League Alerts podcast, and we're going to go into a bit of draft talk. Obviously, the NBA lottery order was set, and the first pick belongs to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Their notable players include Karl Anthony Towns, a top 3 center in the league, and D'Angelo Russell, who they acquired by trade last year. Aaron, what do you think about this team?
Well, it's a really interesting team. I think even without this first pick, they definitely could contend for the playoffs. Not really a championship, but like a 6 or 7 seed. D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns were talking a lot about how they want to get together with Devin Booker, so they're 2/3 of the way there. And they've been talking about trading their first overall pick, so who knows? I'm just pointing that out. Anyway, but assuming they do not trade their pick, I do think that they would draft LaMelo Ball, because he has a sky-high ceiling and he just played a year overseas internationally and professionally. So he's going to have some of that very necessary experience that a lot of these rookies don't have. Now, while he has shown that he can be an incredible scorer, averaging 17 points per game, and a great all-around offensive player with 7.6 rebounds and 6.8 assists, his shooting numbers do scare me, that he only shoots 25% from deep and just 37.5% from the field. But he still has a sky-high ceiling. His floor is quite low, and it's a risky pick. But I think it's a risk that the Timberwolves are going to have to take. I don't like Anthony Edwards that much, mainly because the Timberwolves already have Malik Beasley, who's breaking out, and D'Angelo Russell, so there wouldn't be much room for him to play. And while LaMelo Ball did play point guard, he is 6'7", so he could start at the small forward. So I do think the Timberwolves are going to draft LaMelo Ball, assuming they do not trade this pick.
Yeah, and it's interesting because not only does the Timberwolves have very young players with young talented players with D'Angelo and Cat, but both of those guys, D'Angelo is currently on a 4-year deal, Cat is on a 5-year contract, so they do have both of those guys locked up, and so no matter what, who they draft, they do have a very exciting future for the next couple of years. And the next pick will go to the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, they had a down year with all of those injuries with Steph and Clay, but they are looking to bounce back when those guys get back on the court. What do you see with this team?
Well, I wouldn't really call the Warriors year a down year, more than a purposeful tank, because Steph Curry did not need to be out for that long. Let's be real. They sat him out so that they could lose, because Draymond can't win games for them alone. And so, but there's only one clear pick for the Warriors at number 2, and that's James Wiseman. They need a center. They're not going to be able to sign a good one because their cap space is over the roof. So Wiseman is the clear choice. He was an absolute beast in the 3 games he played at Memphis. Yes, it's a small sample size, but it was enough to prove that he can be consistent and he can dominate among the best college students. He averaged 19.7 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 3 blocks per game. He showed that on both ends of the court, he can be an absolute beast, and I don't see why the Warriors would take anyone other than Wiseman.
And the third pick in the draft will go to the Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets are a very under-the-radar team, in my opinion. Devontae Graham plus Terry Rozier, I think, is one of the most underrated young duos in the league. They have a lot of potential with their scoring and their shooting ability. What do you see in this team?
So the Charlotte Hornets was definitely one of the harder teams to look out for when it came to deciding where they might draft someone. And I kind of picked a surprise. They have been going very big into this small ball lineup. As you know, Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham are both 6'1". So that means one of them obviously plays the shooting guard and is slightly undersized. Miles Bridges is just 6'6" as small forward. PJ Washington at power forward is 6'7". So I thought that they'd want to go fully in on small ball the same way Houston did, but slightly different because they still draft a center. And I think they were going to take Onyeka Okongwu out of USC. Now, obviously, this is a surprise to most people since Okongwu is not necessarily seen as one of the top 5 prospects. But at USC, and we saw a big sample size sides of this because he did play more than 3 games. He played the whole season. He averaged 16.2 points, 8.6 rebounds, 2.7 blocks, and 1.2 steals. And he also shot 61.6% from the field. While his three-point shot is a bit iffy, he does not shoot threes very well. The Charlotte Hornets already have 4 incredible shooters, so it's not going to be that much of a drop-off. And Onyeka Okongwu is a clear upgrade over Cody Zeller. He's a lot stronger, he's a lot more athletic, and he's just a much more dangerous player. Like Wiseman, he can play both offense and defense incredibly well. He is, I'd say, a slightly shorter, slightly less talented version of Wiseman. It's like if you multiplied Wiseman by 0.8, he's like 80% of Wiseman. I think that Onyeka Okongwu has the potential to become an all-star in the NBA. Maybe not the best player, maybe not the best center in the league, but I think that it's very likely that he can be the best player because he on the team because he just is so consistent. He knows exactly what his role is, and he's going to be huge, especially in pick and rolls for Devontae Graham, who's an incredible three-point shooter who just needs a second to get that space.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. As always, if you guys have any comments or suggestions, hit us up on our League Alerts Instagram. And until further notice, I'm Viraj Kedan.
And I'm Aaron Chapo. And if you want to hear more about the NBA draft, be sure to visit the League Alerts website to visit our first mock draft of the year. We're going to be coming out with a few more, but stay tuned for that and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to get emails on every article that's posted.